Hello, and welcome to the Wednesday, March 6th edition of the Cluster API subgroup meeting for SIG Cluster Lifecycle. We have a relatively short agenda today, so let's just go ahead and dive in. Looks like the first one is from Hui about the pre-submit CI. You want to give some updates based on what you put in the notes?
Yes. So there are two issues under pre-submit CI. The first one is there's a duplication of the two jobs, at least here. The Bazel verified job basically be covered by the Cluster API test job, and the Cluster API test actually called other verification script. So I removed that. And the second one is I want to kind of get opinion here is in the current verified Bazel shell script, we basically skip all the verification when Bazel is not available on the machine. This happened to be the case for the CI container we're using. So basically we skip all the Bazel verification in the past CI job runnings. And if your laptop happened to not install Bazel, so it's also skipped. So we didn't find this issue because it's buried in the log, and we never able to kind of dig into the log to see the skip message. But I think we should remove this line. Basically, don't skip it and just report failure if Bazel is not there, because we need that. If anyone has an opinion to not, so we should not remove that. I feel that we need to report failure when Bazel is not there, so that we can catch all those things.
So I stuck a link in chat to PR 633, which is where that got changed. So the initial version that it looks like been submitted or verify Bazel did not have the skipping check. And then when Alvaro submitted or sent out 633, he added that. And Justin Santa Barbara commented in December that that it's likely to be possible to require Bazel for developers for Kubernetes anyway. So that sounds fine with me. We should maybe just double check with Alvaro why he added that in that commit, and if he thinks it's still important to keep it there. And I don't see him on the call today. So you might just ping him into the issue or into a change removing it and saying like, hey, we talked about this on the call, we're planning on removing it. Please let us know if we can't. Oh, maybe Justin, I see you there now. I didn't see you on the list, but you're hiding behind Jeff's camera. But you're muted.
I was just trying to figure out why this sounds great to me. I was trying to figure out why I didn't catch it. I'm guessing I just missed it, but I wasn't sure why. Yeah, but I agree that we should make that change, and it would be nice to give a heads up to Alvaro. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like you did catch it and comment on it, but not push back and say like, it's fine, let's just let it in. And maybe now we're saying, let's not let it
in. Is this something that sort of could potentially detect an issue earlier? Is it the kind of thing that could sort of give you an earlier warning that your Bazel thing is screwed up?
Yes.
Or that may have been the hope, right?
Yes, but it all depends whether you have Bazel installed on your laptop or not. By basically report failure, it also help you when you debugging locally, so that you can get a clear message. Otherwise, you basically think, oh, everything is fine in terms of Bazel.
I think since we're running a check that Gazelle has been run and all the Bazel build files are updated anyway, adding the requirement that somebody have Bazel installed locally kind of makes sense. Otherwise, they're going to have difficulty kind of reconciling that.
Yeah, I like having the check for Bazel. I think instead of exiting and saying we're skipping, we should exit and say you need to install Bazel and have it fail, right? Because if we just take that line out completely, then the next command will fail with probably a strange error message.
I mean, I was talking to Justin about that the other day as well. It's like, it's confusing to have two build systems, right? I'm not really a fan of Bazel, but
I think I made a joke, which is like that. I don't think we're ready to get rid of the Go build just yet, but yes, the reason I really like Bazel is because it is really good at building images, particularly when you are building on a different architecture, and it is a pain to do that in the COPS build. If you have a look at it, like has Docker that like goes and like installs the right version of Go and like builds the artifacts and like unpacks them. It's just really complicated. Whereas with Bazel, that sort of just works. There's a lot of boilerplate, but it just works, and that's why I like Bazel for this. And I think when we use Bazel, we should also, if we use Bazel, we should also be sure that it still Go builds and Go tests, because otherwise that breaks people's IDEs. So the basic flow should still work. But for building images, I would argue that, in my experience, it has been great to have it driven by Bazel.
yeah, it's just like, my contributor experience coming back to Kubernetes after a little while, and finding new things, discovering new things with Bazel, was kind of a little bit frustrating, because I didn't know I had to go and check it. I got some weird failures in CI tests run different on Bazel. I mean, it turned out to be a fairly minor thing, but it was quite confusing to begin with.
I too wasted a lot of time with Bazel last night, trying to figure out why it wouldn't build images. Turns out that it's because I have a modern version of Python.
But I mean, from my point of view, if it was the default thing, I would have to figure it out from the beginning. But at that point, I was already convinced that everything's fine, because Go test passed. Why is Bazel failing?
Yeah, I think that particular one was a race detector, right? So it was statistical.
Yeah, I mean, actually, yeah, the trace detector should probably arguably be enabled in Go build and Go test.
Oh, is that it? I wasn't sure whether it was deterministic or not. Okay, but it wasn't running on Go test. Okay.
Sounds like we should open the PR for this one and start from there.
I think that makes sense. I think we should. I think we can have the broader discussion of whether we want to support, whether we should run Bazel, Make, or both. I think that could be a separate discussion rather than particularly having the SIG. I think that's almost like well, we can make a SIG decision, but we could also make a project-wide decision, I think. Or we could try it in our SIG and see how we feel. But anyone that's tried to build images, I welcome your input, because it is a not fun experience without Bazel.
Can we start a thread on the SIG cluster lifecycle Google group about this, and then just see what the community thinks?
I think that makes a ton of sense.
And for those who are experts at Bazel and the benefits of Bazel, can you guys write up like what are the benefits? Because quite frankly, I don't know what all the benefits of Bazel is.
Yeah, I mean, the only one point I wanted to make is that for a small project, if it's a 6 sub project, it may be a little bit too much. It may be an overkill and sort of a contributor experience killer. I don't know. That's like, it's trying to introduce Bazel, just sort of reading the docs and what it would take to add it to a project. And it felt like I have to do a lot. And then what the contributor is going to have to do, Make is so much simpler. Bazel doesn't quite buy anything. But if it's in Kubernetes project, that's a different question. But in smaller projects, which 6 sub project may fall into, that could be a bit of a concern from contributor experience perspective. We have other items on the agenda.
Yeah, I think we're pretty settled on that one. If people want to take the discussion about Bazel/build systems offline, maybe we could do that in a smaller setting for people that are interested, or like was mentioned on the mailing list, and then sort of circle back with some suggestions instead of trying to debate during this meeting. So next one, Jason, the pivot phase work looks like it's getting close to being done. You want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, so I finally had a chance to pick back up the pivot phase work. Local testing has done has been pretty good so far. I've tested all sorts of scenarios with machine deployments and machine sets, and thankfully I was able to eliminate some of the complexity with some changes that we had go in upstream recently for machine deployment adoption. Previously, that had to be kind of a hack to kind of re-adopt machine sets, machine deployments, but that's pretty straightforward now. Currently, the only thing that I'm really finishing off right now is just getting the test harness back into shape. There's a small set of tests for the pivot phase itself, and I've been working on trying to get the cluster deployer tests patched up because of the changes in kind of the ordering and some of that stuff. It broke some of those tests. So I think I have everything passing in the cluster deployer right now except for some of the delete tests, and I'm hoping to get those wrapped up either today or tomorrow.
Great. I added the next one on here on behalf of Chuck because it sounded like he was blocked on me, which is Chuck has an open PR for documenting the release process, which looks pretty complete. There's one thing that I think is missing that I'm adding a comment for right now. But if people want to go and take a look at that, this should merge relatively soon. So if you have thoughts or comments, I know Andy has left some great comments about how we can replace some of the manual steps with automated steps, which sounds amazing because manual steps are pretty onerous right now. So if people have experience from other projects or other tools that they've used that will help automate some of this stuff, that'd be awesome.
I did want to ask around that. Chuck, is Chuck on the call?
I didn't see him on the list.
Well, I was going to ask about the GCR buckets for pushing images. I saw that there was a staging bucket or a series of staging buckets, and I wasn't sure if there were any updates on getting access to those. But I can follow up with Chuck because I know he was in conversation about it.
Do you know what the name of the staging buckets is?
I believe there's a link to a comment that has all the names. I'll go find it and get it to you.
Okay, yeah, you can ping me in Slack or in chat if you find it before the end of the meeting.
So I think this is being driven by the working group Kate's Infra, which Jeff and I were just in, and Tim Hockin created a script, so there should be GCR buckets at least creatable for all projects. The image promoter, which would be the thing which takes an image out of the GCR staging bucket into the prod bucket, is close. I think it's going to be demoed in 2 weeks at that meeting, so it's not there yet, but very close. I don't know. I feel like you should have permissions to push to the GCR staging buckets if you want to, but I don't know quite what the mechanics of that are. But we could also ask Tim Hockin, I guess, would be the keeper.
So Justin, is the intent there that there's a sort of single staging bucket for all related Kubernetes things to push to? Like this is a sub-project that's not part of the main Kubernetes release. Do we use the same staging bucket or do we have our own staging bucket?
Every sub-project, and possibly more granular than that, but at least every sub-project gets its own GCR staging bucket. I don't know, I'm not sure on the details, but I imagine that each sub-project therefore has its own list promotion file, which controls promotion, which then goes to likely a single prod bucket, which I believe is going to be replicated, but basically a single prod GCR.
Okay, and right now we have our existing sort of quote prod GCR, I think like you and I have ACLs to get to. Or is that going to be replaced with like a different one, or is the idea that the image pusher will push from the common staging bucket that everybody in the community can get to, and that's basically the only way to promote stuff to prod is through the pusher? Sort of a human as a last resort fallback. Is that the intent?
Is encouraged. I I don't think there will be another way to go to prod other than, in case of disaster. I don't know if you're asking whether the pusher could push to a legacy bucket.
I guess what I'm wondering is, we have an existing bucket. Do we need to change the bucket that we use for prod images?
I think the current plan would be yes. I think that if that's a problem, that might be fixable. But as I understand it, the current plan would be yes.
I guess I'm not sure if it's a problem. It's just something that people should be aware of, right? That's likely to change.
So I just pasted a link in the Zoom chat to a comment on an issue about various buckets for staging. And there's more chat down below, because that was from about a month ago.
Okay, cool.
Andy, do you think we'll push from a prow job, or where do you think it will push from?
I don't know yet, Justin. I need to see what Chuck is thinking, because he's been working more on this than I have. But having been involved in releases with various projects over the past couple of years, I would love to have as much automated as possible. Instead of having to go onto your laptop and run Bazel deploy, whatever.
Sounds good.
Okay, so unless anybody else has other thoughts about releases or release automation, you can please go ahead and jump on that pull request. There weren't any other agenda items added before the V1 Alpha 1 tracking item. So I don't know if Andy or Vince, do you guys want to drive our Alpha milestone burn down tracking for today?
Sure. So I have been, pull up my other window here. I've been just looking at everything that's tagged for V1 Alpha 1 and trying to punt anything to next that clearly isn't going to make it and isn't required for the alpha. I know this probably isn't the right way to look at it, but I tend to exclude the documentation ones from absolutely critical, just because we can come in after the fact if need to. There's currently 15 open cluster API V1 Alpha 1 issues, including the documentation ones. And several of them are documentation. The ones that aren't look like they may be either minor things that we can defer or stuff that's in flight with either PRs that are currently open or soon to be open. And Vince, feel free to add stuff as well.
Yeah, I'm not talking because I'm very sick, but 47 is something that I saw your comment, Andy, yesterday, the final health check for machine set. If we can have like some action items out of this, it would be great, because I can probably pick it up next week.
Thanks, Vince. Yeah, so that one is about defining a health check strategy for machine sets. There's a lot of conversation dating back to April 2018 on the GitHub issue, but there haven't been any updates since mid-January. And I wouldn't say that I have the context because I've recently shifted over to Cluster API. So if there's others who have been involved, it would be awesome if we could get some movement, either decide we're going to push this out of V1 Alpha 1 or figure out what we want to do in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, so I think it was discussed a couple of times even in the meeting. So the conclusion eventually was that we need to implement two main objectives in terms of health strategy. First of all, as it's mentioned in one of the comments, I guess, that whenever Kubernetes is not reporting from certain maybe X minutes, we need to from some configurable minutes, probably Y minutes, then we need to replace the machine. At least this was two very basic parameters that we decided as part of the health check strategy there. But I'm not sure whether this should fall under V1 Alpha 1 or should fall out or in. I cannot comment on that. I wanted to work on it probably some time back, but I got completely involved in the stuff in here. But more or less, that's the objective to cover in this issue. That
thanks,
machine set controller should replace to this kind of machines.
So my stance is I would like to defer this to next because we need to cut a line somewhere, and this is functionality that I don't think people have to have, given that it's an alpha.
Yes, I would agree on that. This is more of an add-on functionality on top of the given clusters, so it could be out of V1 alpha. Yeah.
100% agree on punting this for next. I would love to see this actually closed and distilled into a new issue. If someone wants to do that, it would be awesome. Because I don't know if we need all this context and for someone to pick this up.
I mean, I'm against issue sprawl personally. So if we, if this is about defining the health tech strategy, we can update the description to indicate what we want once we get an agreement, and then somebody can go implement it and close it out. But I'm going to go ahead and move it to milestone next.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
The other thing that I'll add is if anybody is looking for PR reviewers, I have spare time, so I'd be happy to assist. I'm NCDC on GitHub, so feel free to ping me.
Andy, have you guys looked to make sure that there aren't any issues that don't have a milestone recently? I know last time I checked was a couple weeks ago.
I have not. I can do that today.
Oh, looks like there are none. I just checked. Okay, good.
Okay, great.
Okay. And I was also just sort of looking through the pull request backlog, trying to make sure we keep that to a sane length. And we've got 15 open right now, some of which are marked as work in progress, but quite a few that have sort of been stalled out. And maybe it should be.
Speaking of that, I had a question for the group. None of the pull requests is currently associated with a milestone. They may be marked to fix issues that are associated with milestones, but would you all be willing to make an effort to try and associate the PRs with milestones so that it's a little bit easier to see which ones we need for V1 Alpha 1 and which ones are longer term?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because I was just looking at PRs that I'm the reviewer on, trying to figure out how urgent it was. And I poked it a week ago saying it needed a rebase, and it hasn't been touched since. And I can't tell if that's we're waiting for decisions to be made, or it's just not something that's going to make the first cut. This is number 651, if people are interested, about what we mean by taints. And this is about updating comments, but it's also related to another PR that actually changes the behavior of the machine controllers in terms of how taints get applied to machines. So I was trying to go back through my backlog and make sure things were sort of kept moving forward. And again, like I can't tell, like you were saying on that one, is it urgent? Is it important? Is it long-term? Right. So I think that's a great idea.
Okay, so I will go ahead and make a first pass attempt at trying to get the milestones set up on the PRs to match the issues.
Vince is saying in chat that maintainers or approvers will have to set the milestones.
Yeah.
Is that true even with the command, like through PROW, through the milestone command? Is that restricted?
Yeah, it is.
That's kind of a bust.
Yeah, you have to be part of the maintainers group to be able to use that
Okay.
command.
Andy, are you part of that group right now?
As of a couple hours ago, yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so you do have the power to do it. Excellent. Cool.
The other thing I'll just say about milestone tracking is I'll periodically over the next several days and couple of weeks be going through and asking if a various issue or PR is strictly necessary for the alpha, or asking for status updates. So if you can just keep an eye on those, everyone, and largely I'm here to try and help get this V1 Alpha 1 release out the door as smoothly as possible. So just keep an eye for questions and comments, and please try to answer timely if possible. I don't have anything else on the alpha tracking.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any other agenda items? Going once, going twice. Okay, one last thing to wrap up the meeting. I did want to make sort of an announcement to let people know that I will be switching to a different team at Google, and as a result, sort of stepping back from a lot of my responsibilities in SIG cluster lifecycle, including my work on the cluster API project. For the people here, it's been a great pleasure, personally and professionally, working with all of you. I'm really gonna miss coming to these meetings and seeing your lovely faces every week, and building open source software together in Kubernetes. And I think there are a number of other Googlers that are going to step up. I've talked to Tim St. Clair a little bit about the co-chair work for SIG cluster lifecycle and starting that transition as well. But before sending out an email to the wider SIG, I wanted to sort of let you guys know in person, since I've been working pretty closely with many of you for quite a while now. So that's that.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you've done, Robbie. My voice is breaking. We'll miss you.
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, Robert.
Yeah, I'll second that. Thanks.
So I think
Thanks a lot, Robert, for all this work.
So yeah, I think there's definitely some opportunities for people to step up and assume more leadership position as I sort of step away. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys to take the project up to the next level and continue pushing forward. So. And also on my new team, I have another meeting at exactly this time, so I probably won't be able to make this meeting anymore. If you guys have questions for me, I'll still be around for a little while on GitHub and responding to comments and on Slack. But I probably won't be in person nearly as much. So. All right, and on that sad note, we will go ahead and wrap up the meeting. And I'll look forward to reading the notes from next week, since I won't be able to make it. Take care, everyone.